A Holler FM podcast.
It's time for 16 by 9. The world's latest and greatest recap show. Hello, all you TV watchers out there. Thank you so much for joining us here on 16 by 9, the show where people with nothing better to do argue about high-budget television shows. This is episode 3, and it's also the third part of our 4-part series on The Boys, Prime Video's current flagship series. This is a spoiler-filled, detailed discussion into all things The Boys. We're going to try and leave no stone unturned and touch on our predictions for Season 1's final episodes. We may also reference differences between the series and the original Garth Ennis comic. So if any of these things might ruin your viewing experience, please pause the podcast, go watch the show up until at least episode 6, and then come back for our discussion. As you probably guessed, on the docket today are episodes 5 and 6, wherein which Starlight's faith is challenged by the Vought PR machine. Petite Hughie continues to juggle his feelings for Annie and his own sense of duty to Butcher's cause. The Deep pays the price for his rapey ways. Homelander's mother fetish turns out to be worse than previously thought. The female reveals she has a name with the help of a new soup character, Mesmer, who immediately turns around and betrays the boys. All right, I think we can jump right into Chanel's I Hate Starlight This Week corner. What do you got for us?
Well, I, as usual, have many thoughts about how much I hate Starlight. And if the actress who plays her ever listens to this, I want her to know that I think that my hatred of her really, I think, complements the fact that she is an amazing actress and is really embodying the character, perhaps. Before I get into Starlight, I will say that one of my favorite things about episode 5 was the Believe Expo and how it just was a central point for all these different, I think, plots to connect finally. And so we're seeing Homelander and we're seeing Hughie and we're seeing Starlight. And in some different ways, they're all kind of going off script. And I know we're going to talk about Hughie and we're going to talk about Homelander later, but I thought that was just a really cool point as we're at this big expo where everybody's talking about their love of Jesus and their hatred of gays. I would say that one of the things that I did appreciate about Starlight, and I think that felt something that I was surprised about, was her reaction to her faith as she's at the Believe Expo. And so when she starts out, she's so excited to go. I think she just feels like this is that little piece of home that she's been missing, and everything's been so terrible, but this is going to be great. And you see her mom coming in, and you're just thinking in your head, this is great. You know, this is going to be good for her. And of course, it continues to be, like, for lack of better words, just shit. And what's interesting to me is that she kind of is like, there's all these different things here, Hughie, that I didn't pick up on before. Like, I don't remember it being so radical and so anti-gay, and now I have to lie about who I am. And I'm still wondering, though, like, I guess I can't figure out, was she always like this? Like, did she just ignore the parts that she didn't like and now it's all coming to light? I think that's what's been hard for me to stomach about her. But then I was also thinking about my own experiences, and I would say that as a child, when you're growing up in any form of religion, I think it's very easy to think about and to focus on, you know, the good things and the things that make you feel good. And I do think as you get older and you start critically thinking about it, it does change. And so I think that was one thing that I did appreciate about Starlight.
100%. Yeah, and I feel like you nailed that, because I'm all for religion, you know, and people embracing their beliefs and whatnot. But I have a similar experience, maybe not to the same extent, but that's something that I've always believed to be true. Is it's always convenient for a child to, like, you know, there's the saying, mother is God in the eyes of all children. So it's doctrine. Aww. And none of where the children aren't even, that's not on their radar. You know, all of the complications with the oppression or any of the tools of power. But But that being said, me having that perspective, I really enjoyed how they played with it. I really enjoyed that little moment where Butcher was fucking with the vendor, being kind of an asshole about it. It's just funny. And so they make it pretty blatantly clear what's going on with that expo. And just because Tool this week is in the ether with the release of their new album, and it just reminds me of Opiate, their first EP being called Opiate, because of the Karl Marx quote saying that religion is the opiate of the masses, and this is the full embodiment of that, in my opinion. And we all need to be, this isn't a preachy podcast, so whatever. But I just thought it was fucking funny, and I really enjoyed when Hughie was like, "You played my butt like jazz, with willingness, skill, and with skill and a willingness to improvise," or whatever it was. It was fucking hilarious.
And you know what? I have a couple of thoughts on this. Okay, so one is that as I'm thinking about this and talking about it, one of the people that I continue to love so far until his whole storyline comes out and it's completely fucked up, but is who I realized that last week I called Eminem. But what I love about him is that he still believes in God in a way that feels realistic. And I think that that's something that I was kind of, when I was looking at Starlight and kind of her crisis of faith, which of course has to be public and she has to make this whole spectacle about it. And then you have like who's like, no, I still believe in God, and yet I can still do all these like unspeakable acts, and he reconciles it. And I think that's something that was really powerful to me. The other thing that I was interested in, surprised about, Ezekiel, who we all know is closeted. He's a superhero. And I'm wondering, like, wait, so do we all know he's a soup? One, or two, do we know him as this, like, Jesus loving, I'm going to bring you baptism? Like, that part was weird. I was like, why aren't we sharing that he loves both God and as a minister and as a soup?
Well, they talked about him in the first episode when they went to the soup club.
Right.
He was the character that we saw.
Yeah, he's a stretchy guy.
So, I mean, he's a Vought-owned property and a soup. So the soup knowledge of him is public. Yeah.
Oh, okay, because he didn't do any cool, like, stretchy moves when he was talking about God. That's why I was confused. But okay, cool.
Yeah, he brought his arms out and he made it like
oh
he was
my God,
hug
you're
the masses.
Right. He
like
did.
He was like, this,
You're
God
totally
gave me
right.
the power to hug all of you, or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. You guys are right.
My loving
it's his whole shtick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for my thoughts on this, I think I immediately thought, wait a second, is this Believe Expo thing, has it changed? I think you touched on this, or has her interpretation of it changed? But if it's her interpretation of it, usually I think in a narrative we would get some kind of an explanation as to why she is feeling differently. And I don't think we've been given an explanation why. I think she's having a crisis of her own, of like what she wants in life because of the whole interaction with the deep. But she hasn't been like touched by a gay person to suddenly be like,
no, but you know what it is though? I cut you off. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
But I think what it is that it's like, I think that interaction with the deep started her on this path of realizing that this thing that I've been working so hard for and dreaming about, now I'm finally here, and it's all kind of like breaking apart. And so I think it's forcing her to re-examine everything. I really do think that, and that's something that I've had happen in my life where, I've God, I have like a whole background in Christianity in many different ways. And I do think sometimes it just takes one interaction or one off thing that happens to you that makes you take a step back and go, wait a second, what am I really pushing? What do I really believe in? I think what's pissing me off about her, this is back to my I hate Starlight thing, just leave. Like, that's the part that like, just like, I'm tired of taking shit. Sure you are. Yet you're back in the offices. Are you really tired of it? It's like, I feel like she wants both. Like, she wants to be able to do her little thing and I'm going to save people. And she wants to be part of the 7. And she hasn't been able to let go of being part of the 7 yet.
Well, one, I've never been a religious person. So you're saying that you could start questioning things without having a direct experience on that one particular thing you're questioning. Like the deep led her to start questioning other things about this.
I mean, okay, let's be clear. I'm not out here speaking for everybody else who has
Well, I mean, you're saying it
religious.
happened to you, so then I mean, it's possible. So because I just felt like it was a little bit of a jump. But two, going on to your thing about her just leaving, but isn't there always the argument that you're better off at affecting change from within?
Well, yes, not only that, but I totally agree that this is like her experience in the seven has like been a catalyst for her understanding certain things. But clearly, I mean, just like we were kind of alluding to before, we have all had our run-ins with what we're told to believe as children, and how that can like play nicely until you start to think for yourself, and then what you choose to hold on to as for part of your belief system is your own story. I didn't get personally the feeling that this was any new realization for her, that the grander scheme of where the Believe Expo was going didn't seem to be a new realization that she needed to defend real people, whatever their belief systems may be. So it seemed like that they framed it to where it had been a long time since she was on that circuit, and she was she's her own woman now.
I personally just felt like it was kind of a jump, but I think all three of us took it slightly differently.
I think I'm going to say for me, and that was again harkening back to my own experience. So I'm not speaking for everybody. People have different shit that happens to them that changes their beliefs. But I do think when you have something that you've worked that hard for, and I don't know if you've ever had something where you've been like, I'm going to get here and I'm going to do this. And then you're
trying
there.
to say we've never worked hard for anything, Chanel? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Shut up. No, I'm just saying like when you have that drive and that ambition and that focus and you get there and you realize that, wait, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I think it does cause you to start picking apart and looking at different pieces in your life. And like I said, like I've been everything from like a straight up Bible study, like leader to, I mean, like actively like recruiting and prophetizing to people. And I think I did have an experience where I was like, whoa, wait a second. This is not what I thought it was when I was in it. And I remember like, one, I was in like this super huge deep depression. Ah, shit. Now that I'm talking about this, I'm realizing like it's hard to extricate yourself because you become so attached and integrated in something that it is a process of trying to figure out like, how do I speak truth to my own power? How do I figure out what I want to do? And then what do I do? Do I leave? Do I stay? Like, how do I affect change?
Chanel's finally having a little bit of empathy for Starlight.
Whoa. Okay, wait.
We're making progress.
Let's not use, I mean, I don't know if I'm saying I'm having empathy, but I will.
White girl from Iowa.
Shut up. But I will say that, yes, I've been in that situation, and I did see that when I was like, I remember thinking like, yeah, like what? Like where do people get off saying like, I hate gay people because God's telling me that? Like, I think that stuff is like crazy.
It wasn't her changing when she went to that expo. It was her realizing that the expo had changed, or her eyesight, her what she was taking in.
Yeah, maybe her eyesight. But she had to have changed because the expo, I think, they're clearly saying never didn't change. Expo.
And I think too, the relationship. This is probably my last point because I think I'm realizing we're talking about this a lot, but her relationship with her mother is another thing that she's realizing finally, like her mom hasn't changed. She's changed because her mom has always been extremely, I'm going to live my life through you. And I have put so many sacrifices to get you to be here. So you're going to now live up to that shit.
Which comes to a head during the speech when she says, just go out there and do it.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think that to me sums up in some ways Starlight's experience thus far has been.
So how can you not have sympathy for her?
How can I not have sympathy for her? I think what's frustrating is how she cannot see the large juggernaut that is the PR machine that she's in.
I just feel like she has the balls to like go for it anyway.
Go for what? Like, effect change where? I mean, are we talking about, like, are we going to just, if we just keep going on this trajectory, it's pretty clear as we look at Queen Maeve that shit doesn't happen. The house always wins.
They did say that. And she said that, I think.
Maeve said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Chanel's on point with that, and she's right. But the house isn't. It is invested literally in the God speak, but it's invested in it's looking to expand. Let's put it that way.
So this brings us to the other thing happening at the expo is Hughie and Butcher trying to infiltrate Ezekiel to find out what's going on with the V, and it kind of all falling to shit when Hughie has to get baptized and therefore messing up his phone, and Homelander showing up there, which he didn't expect, and having to stare into his eyes while he was underwater. Homelander kind of being suspicious about why this guy has a free pass to this very expensive ticket all of a sudden. For me, this was a slightly intense scene. It was fine. It was good building of the plot, I guess. But I'm kind of already burnt out on what this leads to, which is more Hughie versus Butcher about the argument that all soups are bad and all humans are not. Like that there's
Right.
that Butcher has no gray area when it comes to soups.
Hold up. So if we're I just wanted to pause for a second and recognize that Petite Hughie was a fucking G. So this dude goes in, no training at all. Butcher just throws him in and is like, go ahead and blackmail this soup.
Yeah, I said that part was fine. And he does it.
No, it's not just fine. He does it with the intensity of this crazy ass Homelander who can, like Homelander can just X-ray slice him in half.
I'm realizing I jumped the gun on my butt like jazz interlude. My bad.
No, it's fine.
You're right. He pulled it off.
Right. So I just feel like we need to kind of recognize game right there. And that was pretty dope that he was even able to blackmail and have the balls to do that. I get your point about the burnout of like all soups are bad versus the humans are good. But I would just say in terms of the show and how they're moving forward with character development, I think seeing Hughie becoming more and more confident and moving less and less away from that Radio Shack guy has been pretty dope to watch.
Yeah.
So let me pose a question. Do you think the really disturbing kind of prolonged baptism with locking eyes with Homelander was more of a, hey, fuck you, weirdo, you're in my shit and you shouldn't even be here because you didn't pay? Or I'm on to you because I'm suspicious of everybody right now, kind of play by Homelander?
I think it's but we're going to get to this, but in the end, they all get burned. So they're going to connect really quick.
I think it's B.
Oh, I don't think he knows.
I don't think he knows, but I think he doesn't have Spidey sense, but I think his Homelander senses are up. Like, wait a second, you're Starlight's friend. I get it. She's into that whole like soup human shit. That's cool. But why would you even want to, why would Hughie want to be there? He's not you know what I mean? Like, he's not a diehard fan. He didn't melt when he saw Starlight. So I think Homelander's like, wait a second, this isn't right. I'm going to put a little scare in him just so he knows who has the upper hand.
Okay. All right. Getting back to the Butcher and Hughie real quick, because it keeps going for both of these episodes. You have Butcher showing up at the bar when Annie and Hughie are together. And then you have Butcher taking him to the AA, or not the AA, the Soups Anonymous, and whatever that is.
I mean, I guess I feel like you're skipping over the part to me.
Oh, I'm not going in chronological order. I'm just trying to talk about Butcher and Hughie's relationship.
Yeah, I guess what I was going to say is that I felt like Hughie made a pretty conscientious decision at the end of episode 5, where I think he realized that he had a choice where he could kind of continue on the path that like Butcher was on of like, I'm just going to like hold up my revenge for like my dead girlfriend forever. Or I'm going to start to think about this as something that could be more than that. And I felt like he made a conscious choice to go that route, which has now set him up against Butcher.
What was that choice?
So to be fair, he's made it fucking abundantly clear over and over again. We've been through this before, so we don't know what where the coin's gonna land. You know what I mean? Because like he keeps flip flopping.
Yeah, like I think, for example, I would say one of the cases was that when he first went on the date with Starlight to the bowling alley, and he's kind of like, ooh, I'm following the vibe. He sees his dead girlfriend, and then he immediately bugs her phone, I think. And then I would say at the end of episode 5, when Starlight confronts him after he gets again kind of bullied by Butcher to get to these tickets to go in to see Ezekiel, he kind of just goes, you know what? I get it. My girlfriend just died. I'm like, it's probably the first truth that he's actually told her. But in my mind, he's making a decision by telling her the truth that this is something that he actually wants to pursue, not just as a means to an end.
But that decision flies in the face of bugging her phone. So I think what Nick's saying about him flip-flopping
No,
is
I
correct.
agree with Nick. That's my point. That's why I brought up those two examples.
But then you have Butcher, who is not flip-flopping,
No.
In fact, he's even saying literally out loud, I've said this before, how many times do I have to say it?
Right.
All soups are bad. They all suck. Get over it. Including
which is going to add more flavor to the acceptance, inevitably, possibly, of the female.
My point is that I could just do without this whole subplot of Hughie and Butcher not being on the same side.
Well, I feel like it's necessary, but I don't want to waste too much time on it because it seems very of course, yes, that would happen. Unless they're going to,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nick.
Us with it.
I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's nothing that anybody's really that interested in, but I do think it's necessary, even if just to flesh out Butcher's motivation and his character development.
But I feel like it's one of those plot points that the writers put in because otherwise they would only have 20 episodes, but they need 40. So they're gonna almost get there, and Butcher and Hughie's relationship and disagreement on this point is gonna blow up the whole mission, and they're gonna have to start from scratch and then come to finally be brothers again or hate each other in the end. And if they had just gotten along from the beginning, we could have ended it. Is
this informed by your knowledge of the books, or this is just your own feelings?
It's mainly my own feelings.
They're not mutually
yeah. No, and to be very honest with you guys, I remember very little of the books. I read it so long ago. I've had so many cocktails and beers since I read this.
Well,
thoughts on that?
Sure.
But yeah, no, I think I agree. Nick and I probably disagree for different reasons, but I would say that I do think that you need to have a little bit of conflict. It would be a boring ass show to me in some ways if everybody was all lined up, all soups are bad. No, or
it may be.
I think we need a little bit more.
To people, but it's necessary. I mean, it brings it to some level of familiarity, some realism, because that would be what would happen.
I mean, I'm more interested in knowing why MM dislikes Frenchie so much. And you could have the same kind of catalyst of a split in the boys between them two, which I find more interesting than the Butcher Hughie thing.
Well, that begs the question, though. Is it the character? So is it Butchie and Hughie that are less interesting? Because I think I brought that up on the last podcast that I was really interested in MM and Frenchie's disagreement. And you guys are both kind of meh. So I'm just curious. At least that's what I remember.
So let's lead this into that scene and the soup collateral damage AA kind of thing. Or not AA, but, meeting support group.
Support group. There you go. Which was very well done.
But I was being pulled on not that I was being pulled on in different ways, and I thought that was really effective as just engaging television, because it was half of me was just yeah, you fucking preach, brother, to Butcher, and the other half of me was oh, that's rough. Not to mention the obvious or requisite hilarity of the frozen dick being broken off, literally broke him off.
I enjoyed the scene, but in real life, any group leader would have shut it down the moment Butcher opened his mouth like that, and there would have been no more talking until he was gone.
A couple of thoughts. I mean, we got to give a shout out to you, Nick, for the she broke him off scene. That was actually funny to me. And it was a good lighthearted way, considering that he was one super sad and still in love with her. So, I mean, God, did that make anybody else think about Lorena Bobbitt? Okay. My brain is obviously a little jumpy on this.
You know what's fucking sad is no, it didn't, because that's how much horrific shit keeps happening every day. And that would have like 4, 5, 6 years ago. But
That's true.
I'll just leave it at that.
And now we're laughing at a guy that got his dick broke off. Okay. I thought that it was actually a really effective way, and probably more effective. And I would contrast that scene then with the bar scene where Butcher goes in and basically is like, you know, if you keep fucking up and not going to protocol, I'm going to tell Annie the truth. I thought that was a weaker scene, and this kind of support group was a stronger scene, because what you really see here is you see who Butcher is. You see how frustrated he is. You see that he's like, I'm all about rage. I'm all about anger. I'm all about action. I'm not trying to sit here, process my shit, think about how it feels. I want to do something because I'm so fucking pissed off, and you are all pathetic. And so I think that to me...
That's exactly why he
right.
brought him there.
And it gives me insight. And he thinks for that that's going to motivate and inspire Hughie. And I think instead Hughie's looking at him like, oh shit, like you've got some serious trauma.
I felt a little bit like it left him just as confused as before.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like he feels like blindly loyal to the cause on either side.
But that's my point about the whole subplot between them two, is that nothing that either one does moves it any forward. Hughie just keeps going, okay, man, I hear you. And Butcher keeps saying, all soups are bad. But nothing's moving forward.
Where do you want it to go? I think I'm confused.
Honestly, that makes a lot more sense when you put it that way. And when we've come to this mechanically for storytelling, yeah, I see your frustration.
I think I disagree with both of you guys. I'm okay with it. I think for me, this is not necessarily about getting to like moving something forward. It's more about just kind of getting clear on like the motivations and the character development.
Yeah, understand fleshing out the characters. And, you know, I didn't say necessarily that I completely agree with Robert, but I see where he's coming from.
All right. I guess we'll find out where Hughie and Butcher go in the next couple episodes, hopefully. In the meantime, let's talk about Homelander and his weird relationship with Madeline as it gets weirder and weirder.
Oh, Homelander. Like we didn't see this motherfucker wanted that milk before. He straight up was on it. And, you know, not to be overstating the situation, we all saw what happened. He wanted that fucking milk. And what does that tell you? Well, we're become privy to the information, you know, that all of that backstory where he was saying, oh, this is my father, this is my baseball team, is all bullshit. And he was grown in a fucking lab, and his only interaction that was memorable was to sort of cynical, you know, evil scientists growing his ass. And it's unfortunate. And, you know, you create a monster, you got to live with it.
Did either of you feel any empathy for him after that scene?
Yeah, so I have a couple of thoughts about this, clearly. One is that I think the kind of watching episode 5 and 6 together, Homelander has all this kind of like, you know, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do what I want. I want to get out. I want to do more. But it all kind of comes off as like basically a kid that desperately wants attention. And sure. That's what I think I'm realizing. And so as you watch that episode, and at first you think that like, oh yeah, Homelander has something really clear. He's going to give this impromptu speech. He's going to rile up the masses. And then, you know, Madeline comes in and she's all like, have I been ignoring you? Is that the problem here? And it's in this weird way, right? Because she has her own baby.
She goes hard in the paint after that with like reeling him in. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, she has her own baby that she wants to pay attention to. And she says like, we need boundaries. And then she realizes this motherfucker is going to have a tantrum. But because he's a soup, his tantrums aren't like, you know, my 6-year-old where he just like melts and falls apart and cries. His tantrums are, I'm going to like, you know, rile up the entire country to push for soups in the wrong way to get into the military. And so now she has to go in. What's weird about it, not even weird, but just I think was a little off-putting for me was the inherent like connection of like mother and sexuality that happens there. I mean, I breastfeed my son. I breastfed both kids. There's nothing sexual about it, but yeah, you clearly see that it's all sexual for them. It's like she's like unbuttoning her shirt and she's all like, I'm gonna caress my bras, you know, and you're like, oh, I think I'm like that.
There's no roadmap for this kid. He doesn't know what he's feeling or why.
Exactly.
And on that level, yeah, I guess there's some vague empathy, but you know, the egg's already hatched. It's not a matter of feeling empathy for the origin story of the apocalypse. You know what I mean? Like it's beyond at this point.
Although I will say that when I saw the little boy in the little lab with the blanket, my heart did go, I just want to hold him.
I fucking knew you were going to say that.
You knew I was going to say it. I want to hold him, but he also has X-ray vision and at any given point can throw a tantrum and cut me in half. So what do you do with that? What do you do?
You do what she did. She looked at she realized what he was doing, staring at her. She calls him in, says, you know, what are you afraid of me? And then he's actually asking himself whether or not he is. And then you play the game. And you know what? It will remain to be seen whether or not she's getting in too deep. Because seems like she's got the upper hand right now, but all it takes is one flinch. What do you think, Rob?
I understand that he never had a mother and father, so she's playing the mother role, and she gambled that was what he was looking after. That is kind of what drove him, and she's right. And I just don't understand why it has to be mixed. I mean, I guess because of his age, because he's a full-grown man. I could see why he would just be comforted if she just held him, but then you have this like unbuttoning of the blouse, like Chanel said. But that one I could almost buy as she's just giving him hints to like come here and be in my bosom. But then you have in episode 6, I believe, where she straight up grabs his junk when they're standing next to each other. So it really is this like specific conflating of motherliness that he missed as a child and sex. But why does the sex need to be there? Because he can get the sex from anybody.
I don't want to be a hypocrite because I'm sure I've overanalyzed aspects of all these nuances, but I guess what I'm trying to maintain as far as like my receiving of all this of all these happenings is this is supposed to be over the top and fun, and it's supposed to be, you know, relatively intelligent, but not. This isn't fucking China Val, you know, level shit here. We're being taken on a fun ride. So I don't want to like rack my brain about the intentions and the nuances of like this taboo situation too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, it's fun. It's a ride. We enjoy it. I'm with you on it. I think part of what makes watching these shows interesting is putting a little bit of like thought into, like, what is that about that? And, you know, was there something that he's missing that she's giving him? I think just understanding the motivations of both characters. So I think I'm a little bit more on the, like, I'm fine to do a little bit of a deeper analysis on that.
Plus, if you like ask these actors in like a behind the actor's studio kind of situation, they would talk so much about the behind the scenes driving force of this character and what this character's thinking.
Yeah, but that's mostly just actors doing what they got to do to get through their fucking day. It doesn't really, ultimately, unless the director is the one, you know, at the helm or the one with the strings, you know, making them feel a certain way. Like Kubrick freaked out people to get certain responses from them on screen. That's not the level of like direction we're dealing with here. So that's more so actors like feeling important.
I don't know if I agree with you, because I mean, like, Amazon's pouring a lot of money in this for right now until their Lord of the Rings program comes out. This is kind of their flagship show. They want a Lord of the Rings type of hit, and people analyze every little eye flinch and lip curl in Lord of the Rings. So why can't we analyze The Boys the same way?
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. It's not like it's not an endeavor that's got no ends with the means that we put in. But
well, I'll just say my last couple thoughts on this, and we can move on. One is that I think what'll be interesting for me to see is I'm curious about why she had the baby. So why she had Teddy in the first place. She does seem like, I want boundaries. I want to take care of my kid. I want to be a mom. But she also has these superheroes to deal with that seem like they take a huge amount of time. And I think the other...
we spoke about the previous iteration of the boys. What was her past? What is motivating her? It's interesting for her to be able to have the capacity to do all these things that are maybe just inhumane, while feeling that necessity to mother a child. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think that's exactly it. That's what I was curious about is like, why have this baby? What's your motivation around that? And I was very curious to see, I think, as you said, Nick, before, like how this thing with Homelander plays out. He's clearly fucked up and disturbed. I mean, his relationship with Maeve was like, God knows what. He raped Butcher's wife. So, I mean, he has his own fucking shit going on. I'm just curious to see how it plays out and what happens next.
All right, moving on. Do either of you feel like the Deep got what he deserved, or maybe he got off a little light?
Well, like, are you talking about like in real world terms or like the comic book? Because
I mean, and whatever you want to attack it as. I mean, he gets publicly accused. His boss knows there's other women, and basically he just gets sent on a vacation, a paid vacation. What is it? What is it called? A sabbatical? Leave of absence.
Sabbatical isn't exactly a paid vacation. But...
So, I mean, shouldn't there have been like a trial or... I don't know. What do you think, Chanel?
What do I think? I mean, I think this kind of in some ways shows the complexities of what's going on here. And so I did feel like, one, the Deep is a fucking joke. We all know that. He tried to save a dolphin and couldn't even execute that at all. Not even well, but at all. On the flip side, it's almost like, so he's coercing these women into having sex with him, in some ways, in my mind, to feel some power, some superiority, because he's clearly not getting it anywhere else. That doesn't excuse his actions, but it provides and paints some kind of a picture for it. It's just funny to me because, Starlight's like, I'm done taking shit, and she feels so empowered, and yet the person that she's kind of points to is actually the biggest joke of the seven. She's not really taking on anyone or anything that's really going to justify or get to the systemic injustices that she's pointing out. And so that's where I think I feel like, did he get what he deserved? Probably. Is it really getting to the root of it? No. Like, corporate knew about this. They handled it in the way they normally would because it came out publicly. He has to pay the full price of it, even though Madeline has known probably for years and years and years this has been going on. And I
wouldn't even call it the full price.
Well, and she's, and I think Starlight's unaware, thinking, oh, yay, I did this thing. And it's like, no, you didn't. You didn't do anything.
Right.
That's what I think.
Right. But it depends on like how you want to psychoanalyze the situation. Like, he could either just be a raunchy dude who takes advantage of power and he's a scumbag, or it is compensating for his actually not being the number two in the seven, trying to exert his power, and that's where all of these insecurities are manifesting. Or it could just be truly him trying to convince himself that he doesn't want to fuck orcas all the time. That could, who knows?
It could be, it could be that he really is into dolphins and orcas and God knows what else. Yeah, that's true.
Question. Lamplighter leaves at the very beginning of the series, and that's why Starlight comes in. Translucent's gone about 5 days later. The Deep is out publicly. Translucent is still covert on a mission. But in reality, in the span of a month or two, the seven are down to 4 plus the new Starlight.
I didn't really perceive it as he was out. I felt like he was just on a prolonged PR campaign to
I feel like when they're you're going to be gone for a while, it's the first step to start recruiting for somebody new.
Yeah, true. I guess like in a band. Yeah, that makes sense.
But the seven, in either way of how you count Starlight or Translucent, the seven are they haven't been the seven for a minute now.
Well, I think But this is all about public and PR. So it doesn't matter that we know, because nobody else knows that Translucent is gone. No one knows that the Starlight thing is undercover. So for everybody else, they're just like, oh, it's the Seven, and now the Deep has like publicly apologized, is out.
Yeah, the Seven has never been fractured in the eyes of the public.
Well, maybe until now with the Deep.
Right.
Wow.
I think one of the characters of the Seven that we haven't talked about that I would like to talk about is really Queen Maeve, if that's all right with you guys.
I mean, I just think she's the most boring of the Seven, but go ahead.
I don't think that at all. I think she's the most human.
I think Starlight is clearly the most boring, but whatevs. No, I think I agree with Nick on that. I think she's the most human, and she's having the most human reactions out of anybody because she's the one that's seeing, I think, the full, power of the corporations and of Homelander. And so to me, her character continues to be in some ways the canary in the coal mine of, don't you think I've already tried this? Or I'm sorry, I didn't give you a heads up, but none of this is really going to work. You're not getting change yet if you see me still being kind of scared and hiding under this shell. And I think what's really interesting about her character is that she's so strong, she's indestructible, but inside, as her ex-girlfriend points out, she's constantly living in fear. And I'm just curious, outside of the corporation, outside of Homelander, what created that level of fear inside of her that she can't seem to break free from it?
Two things on that. One, she should be more aware of what's going on around her, and she should maybe exercise a little bit more wrath when people are blatantly, exposing her secrets and whatnot. And two, we can tap on that too. I'm so sorry that I don't off the top of my head have the actress's name from Glow, but she looks great in this, and she does a great job, and I just want to shout out to her. She's the coordinator of the propaganda video that they're producing.
Oh, she plays the
she's the
Madonna
rich,
type,
right?
Yeah,
she's got the limousine. She's got
that's
she's,
right.
Once for not, but still once for a lot.
Yeah, I knew I had seen her before. Okay.
Anyway, she they make her look a little funky and Glow, but she's still beautiful. But I think irregardless, I appreciate her appearance here.
I still find Maeve to be I want her to do something.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the point. I think Nick is right. If somebody's secretly recording your conversations, and you're just like, oh, fuck, I told you not to do it. You have the power to crush these cameras. What has happened or in your past or currently that is forcing you to be so cowardly when you are indestructible? You're one of the strongest pieces of the Seven, to the point that you're telling Homelander the truth about himself. That's the part that I think is making me curious about her.
Her making a decision and doing something, or even if it's reactionary, just doing something is one of my needs at this point.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're just going to watch things happen to her. I don't know. At least this season. I don't see how they could insert any of her doing anything but in 2 more episodes.
All right.
Well, let's go on to the to me, the most gripping part of this 2-part block was the introduction of the character of Mesmer, who was a childhood type star and who could read people's minds if he touches their bodies or their hands. And the idea of using him to figure out what the female's motivations are. And then that leads us to her name, which is Kamiko, and where she's from, more or less, and her motivation being that Southeast Asia, she wants to get back to her brother to take him away from the terrorists that kidnapped the both of them as children.
So let me ask you this. When you were reading the comic, it does, on any level, it's super reminiscent of, the reality of Haley Joel Osment. So I think it was it could have either been a fun pick that they manipulated to fit that role for him, or like it was just a brilliant casting, which is.
I think it was brilliant casting, regardless, but I don't remember in the book. I know there's I think there's a one episode, or what do you call it? A one issue, sidebar about who he is, but I can't remember if that's his exact story or not. Like I said, it's been a long time, but regardless of whether or not it's a direct pull from the comic, I think that they did a good job of forming the character and casting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think watching him on that circuit, handing out the what is it, the DVDs and all that stuff, and I could think of.
They were all VHSs.
They were VHSs, and all I could think of.
Beta.
I just was thinking about, oh my God, it's that cute kid from The Sixth Sense, which exactly what you would think, except that in this case it'd be his show, and that's how you would feel. So I agree with you that it was brilliant casting. And if the comic books did that, then that was also awesome.
And boy, did he flip flop faster than anyone else.
After he extended his hand,
got a non-snitch mentality. What?
I was gonna say, yeah, right on what you were saying. After he extended his hand to Butcher, I was like, oh, he's really trying to be a man's man. I got this.
Hell no.
And then it was 2 seconds later, Homelander's
you were duped.
Right there. Yeah, I was. Yeah, they fooled me.
No, I was totally duped because I thought that the appeal of seeing his daughter and building a relationship with her would be greater than the clear greed that he's had throughout his kind of teenage years. But no, it obviously wasn't. He just wants to be back in the fold in any way possible.
That could be half him realizing it's too far gone. She's just being, it could be half true. And it could be half him, being selfish and saying, I never wanted her in the first place or whatever. But, I mean, the possibility's there for either of them.
Yeah. Either way, he totally screws the boys over because now they're made. And the question of whether or not Homelander recognized Hughie in the baptism thing is it's a moot point now because we know he does now. And it's only been
what do you mean whether he recognized Hughie or not in the baptism thing?
No, or whether or not how much he knew of Hughie during the baptism scene. You asked whether he just thought it was a weirdo or if he was suspicious. Yeah, it's a moot point now.
Until A-Train brings it to him, brings the visuals.
Yeah, no, I agree.
A-Train brought the original, the Frenchman and the girl. But the rest of these pictures came directly from Mesmer.
Oh, correct. Sorry.
In any case, so we're left with Homelander going, okay, I have photos of all these people that and I know they're the ones that killed Transparent.
Pause for a second right there. Homelander, so what was interesting to me about that interaction, which you guys probably want to move on from, but I would just say is that he just treats all of these soups, with the exception of Queen Maeve, so disposable. I mean, I am just floored by how he's like, okay, you know what? Look, kid, I don't have time for you. We don't know each other. We're not going to. I don't give a fuck. But it's also the same way with the Deep and with A-Train too. I mean, everybody is basically transactional. So this to me just emphasizes that Maeve must have something really important also because she's one of the few people that he does not treat like, garbage.
The only reason he is not completely a rogue is because he was brought up in this transactional system or taught to at least be transactional because people knew he could do whatever he wanted if they hadn't conditioned him to be concerned for whatever he's got going, whatever it is that they can provide him. So you're absolutely right. He is honed in on what it is they need to be doing to facilitate the end game for the Seven, and that's his whole life. So he has no problem leaning on them and letting them know, I will be watching over you, saying it like it's a good thing.
You know what, guys? Sorry to interrupt you, Nick, but I just realized that we never talked about the big reveal of the last two episodes. Like probably the biggest reveal of the last 2 episodes.
But the fact that these motherfuckers are test tubes.
Yeah, they're all made. They're not born this way. And then we have the probably could be the best or worst scene of the show so far, the baby gun lasers.
Well, I think Butcher said it best. That was fucking diabolical, man.
Well done.
It was good. I mean, I liked it. It was camp in the best way possible. But yeah, I mean, what do you guys think of that? This is, I'm not going to say where it lies in terms of being lined up with the comics, because I'm not even sure yet. But does that change anything from you, knowing that they're man-made as opposed to just being like God's creatures?
I'll be super brief, and I'll just say that not yet, because I'm not convinced that it's that all of them are. But obviously it changes things for Vought, and no wonder, as we touched on before, that this is a weakness for them as far as the public finding out. So what do you think, Chanel?
Yeah, I got a couple of thoughts. I mean, I think this is what I was thinking about when I talked about in the last podcast, when I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be more sinister, but it's just performing enhancing drugs. Whoops, was I wrong? Because it's not just like, ooh, you take it and you get souped up. This is them creating babies to be superheroes and also creating super villains so that now these, heroes can fight against these villains. And so
that's what's interesting.
Right. So I'm like, you're basically just like taking people at will and dosing them and making them, this villain in your storyline so that now you have a reason to do this. And these things have real world impacts. And so for me, I was like, oh shit, this is super sinister. Again, I'm thinking
the true reach of Vought.
It does. And I'm like, well, I guess I always think in my head, all this is like, it's it's all under a corporation. So the corporation owns all of these things. But what's stopping anybody that's doing this work from making a quick dollar or many dollars and selling this to like, I don't know, like Russia or North Korea? Like, there's just these bigger world impacts that I think about when I'm watching this. And I'm realizing that this is actually a really sinister plot that I was hungry for, that I'm now like, oh, okay, I get it. This corporation is crazy.
Having spoken about analogs for one superhero to another comic strips superhero, this is where shit hits the pavement. Analogs for real world situations, but we'll maybe save that for BBC America.
Who gets to choose which babies get parents and which babies don't? Like, that's what I'm curious about, because maybe Homelander is older and he was a test tube baby. And maybe that baby that has the eye thing shooting out, like, who wants that kid? But Starlight, for example, had a mom who maybe bought her. Same thing for Atran as a parent. It's like, so some of these superheroes have parents, have families. How do you get them? What is that?
Well, it casts a shadow on Starlight's mom because she says that she was born that way and that she almost blinded the doctor. But if the B thing is true, then we know that that's not true.
I mean, that shadow on Starlight's mom has been cast for a minute.
Are you thinking like, I want to give my little one the best opportunities? I'm just gonna dose this little fucking thing with this blue shit. Like, how do you feel about that? Being a mother.
No, I don't want to dose either one of my kids with that. And I think I watched that scene with the babies and was super duper sad because I was like,
having met other parents at preschool and kindergarten, what can you tell us non-children having motherfuckers about what everyone else feels like? Because you seem to be more reasonable. Well, typically more reasonable about raising your children. What about the rest of us? What have you noticed? I mean, I want to know. Do you think this would happen?
I think it's more likely to happen in the way that it's presented in the show, is that these kids are offered up for adoption and the parents don't necessarily know what they're getting into.
No, I mean, you know what? I would gently push back on that. And what comes to mind are all those parents that like put their kids in that crazy shit, like those dance moms or those, pageant shows like I would watch on TLC. Okay. And I kind of feel like there are some parents who are like, no, we really want Jimmy to be super excellent. So we'll do it. We'll take the cost of it. So I do think there are parents out there that want that. And will pay I think Starlight's mom is a great example of a parent that's like basically a pageant mom, except the pageant is a superhero.
Yeah, that was a pretty easy one too. But so do we feel that she's in on the Compound V thing, or she, or what?
I don't know to what extent she's lying, but she's lying at some level. We know that for sure. And she probably signed an NDA herself.
Sure. Well, I mean, depending on her involvement.
I wanted to go back to the female. I think she was somebody that I remember I was like, this woman is crazy. And I thought Frenchie was crazy for even wanting to engage with her. What was really actually cool about the scene with Mesmer was giving her just more context. So she's not just the female, this, woman that can attack and can regenerate, but that she actually had a life, and she's not just a terrorist, but she's a person, had a family, had a brother, has emotions other than what we see on her face. And so I really liked that and enjoyed kind of getting a slice of who she was.
Yeah, I did too. I just never for a moment felt genuinely that it was a threat that she might not be what we wanted her to be. Like she might have done some bad things, but I was just waiting for the other foot to drop when they posed that whole she's a terrorist thing, and that's good. That's fine. It's like it keeps it's the heartbeat of any story, so that was fine. But it was great to see her be vindicated, not only with Mesmer's narking ass, but her actions. So,
Yeah.
So it seems like she's one of the boys. She's a fucking Spice Girl.
I agree with you on that. I think what was, because, and I think it flied in the face of kind of Butcher's like, all soups are the same, blah, 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 like in his like spewing shit or whatever it was. But also in the face of what MM was saying of like Frenchie being crazy, and what I was saying, that she actually is intentionally making decisions, and her main goal was for most of the time that we've met her to get back to her brother. But I think just seeing Frenchie's kindness and his persistence and the fact that he's seeing beyond what I saw, I thought those were all admirable traits that she kind of gave us a payback on.
Totally. Frenchie deserves a fucking cookie for sure for being on this one. It seems like it's going to pay dividends,
Yeah, I mean they need something with strength that can fight on their side too, because they don't have anything to go one-on-one with them. So,
and hopefully Starlight doesn't end up in the boys. I hope, because that'll just
that would suck,
right?
Yeah, you can't have the female and then Starlight and the boys.
I think there's a reason. There's one. Yeah, anyway. Okay.
You could.
What do you guys want to see happen before?
I'm gonna get hashtagged. What?
What do you guys want to see before the finale or happen this season?
I just want to see a little bit more like hilarious public lashing of the Deep, just because he's like comic relief and it's just fun. I want to see, honestly, Butcher and MM be a little bit more, given a little more dimension. I mean, MM is the one with the least amount of dimension at this point. So I don't necessarily think it's pivotal to the story at this point, but what's got me on a cliffhanger is whether or not Madeline is as in control as she thinks she is, and whether or not Maeve is on the team she thinks she's on, and whether or not Butcher really has got this all under control.
All right, Shannon, what would you like to see before the end of the season?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some duplication with what Nick said, but I definitely agree. I really want to get just a little bit more of I think we have some of like Frenchie, some of Butcher, not really sure what's driving or motivating So I am curious about that. I would love to figure out or just see, because right now, to be really honest, it feels like Homelander is just going to decimate the boys. I'm not sure what their add value is. Like, I mean, they got one soup, translucent, but how are they going to get Homelander? It doesn't even make sense to me. So if there's something that they've got or they, whatever it is, I'd be curious to see about that. I'm curious, as I've said before, about Queen Maeve and a little bit more about how she fits into this. And I'm especially curious about Mr. Edgar, because I think at a certain point, he either has to show up because Madeline doesn't have it in control. It just seems like we need to get a sense of like who this guy is, even what he looks like. But he's on the 82nd floor. We know he's super old. What has he got in power? Why are people so afraid of him?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Edgar too, and what his role is exactly, as you said. Personally, sure. I'm bummed out that we didn't get to this season. His storyline is crazy, off the wall. It's very pertinent to our times now. I think it's really pretty in a way. I don't know. People who read the book are going to think I'm weird for saying that. I really hope they start off next season with MM's storyline. Because unfortunately, he does come off as a bit one-dimensional right now, and that's a shame. It's a real shame. For this season, I just want to see. I don't want a traditional cliffhanger, but I do hope that there's something that drives people to come back next season, and I hope this stays around long enough to come to its natural end and not an abbreviated stay. With that being said, I have some very sad news to report for both of you. There are no additions to the ass count this episode.
Wow.
Wow. So we're stuck at 3. Hopefully we get a few more butts before the end of this show.
Well, you know what that means, folks. Robert's going to post a picture of his ass to be uploaded with this current episode, just so that we all are taken care of and our needs are met.
In that department, I might as well be translucent because there's nothing there, buddy.
Just some hair.
All right. I think we're going to end it there. We have 2 more episodes to watch. Hopefully we have a nice long Supermax size episode for the finale coming for you. We all 3 of us have refrained from watching past what we're discussing at a given episode of the podcast. So we both have to find time to watch the next 2 episodes, or all 3 of us have to find time to watch the next 2 episodes, and then we will be coming to you with the conclusion of our 4-part series on The Boys. In the meantime, Nick, do you have any plugs or shout outs you'd like to give?
Oh, well, yeah, just again, I guess in the first episode I gave a recommendation for a comic, and I got another one. Love this comic. It's by Image. Love Image. I've been there from the beginning with those guys, even back in the Savage Dragon days. This title is called The Mantle. There's 1 volume. It's Brian Lavelle and Ed Brayson. And it's when I mentioned God Hates Astronauts and telling you that it took tropes and went bonkers with them and just went Willy Wonka. This is more taking really specific tropes of a superhero story and inverting them like a negative almost. If you were looking at the negative of a photograph, and I think it's super fun, super intelligent, and definitely worth a read. That's all I got.
All right, Chanel, I think you do have something to plug.
I do have something to plug. So I do have another podcast with my sister, which is aptly titled Sipping with My Sister. It is on Holler FM. It is on iTunes, Apple Podcast, as well as Google Podcast, Stitcher, and Spotify. I would encourage you guys to take a listen. We talk about movies that we watched in our childhood, So we talked about The Labyrinth, Child's Play 2, and what's next up is Fatal Attraction. And yes, we watched some crazy shit when we were kids.
And Fatal Attraction is the first of a theme that you guys are jumping on, right?
It is. The theme is women revenge movies where badass women take charge on those men or other people that have wronged them.
That sounds great. I can't wait to hear it myself. All right, guys, make sure to find us on Twitter at 16x9pod, on Instagram at 16by9pod, and on Facebook. Let us know how you are enjoying the first season of The Boys, and let us know if anything about the series is disappointing you. Also, if you have any notes or needs or wants for us here at 16 by 9 and how you'd like us to approach the show and future shows, feel free to drop us comments on Holler FM or on iTunes or on anywhere else where you can find the show. Thank you so much for listening.
One more thing though. If you're listening to us on iTunes, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, let us know how we're doing.
Yes, that does help us find more listeners, and it bumps us up in the algorithm if you leave us a review and a good review. Again, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoy. We are out.
Bye.
Holla, holla.
This was a Holler FM podcast.
And I think we're done.